Yep.
Lenin, Ablat Gemara. It's the first day Cholamoid Sukkos. We're up to Daf Chov Gimel Amud Aleph Masech Beya. So we're in the middle of discussing whether there's a problem with creating a fragrance in the air generally. And we had a Machlekes Shammai and Hillel. We had a Machlekes of two versions of Asi. And the final version of Asi is that have an argument Shammai and Hillel whether you're allowed to create fragrance generally or not. But to put fragrance into clothing, he says it is a problem. He holds it's a problem because, and regarding why there's an argument regarding fragrance, is why the Rabbanan forbade it is because you need dover hashav l'chol nefesh, and this is not a dover hashav l'chol nefesh. When it comes to clothing, putting fragrance in clothing is like moiled reich. You are creating the reich, and so on. Also, because when you put the spices on directly on the fire, you're sort of extinguishing part of it and you're lighting part of it, and therefore it's a problem. But if you put it onto an earthen clay shard, which is very, very hot, then you're allowed to. There's no problem of extinguishing and there's no problem of lighting, and therefore there's no issue of rice. And Rabbah wants to say it's still forbidden because you are creating a fragrance. And it's like moiled, you're creating something. So we're up to the top of the page, 2 lines to the top. Rabba, Rabbi Yosef, and the Amri Tavaya, they both say. They say that's chufe kosa asheroi, to turn over a cup that's full of fragrances on top of silk clothing, in order to they should put into them a nice fragrant smell. The Yom Tov, it is also forbidden. Why? My time you're creating a fragrance, so therefore it's also midrabban, like you're creating. Why is this any different? We said before you're allowed to roll it in your hands regarding the psamim, branches of psamim. You roll it between your fingers in order to extract some of its fragrance, or you can even clip off the very top of it. So therefore you can allow the fragrance to escape. And why is that permitted? To smell it, you clip off part of it, the top of it. So my answer very simply. The fragrance is always there. And all you are doing is you're just disseminating the reich all around. Here you're creating, by burning it on the fire, you're actually creating reich, and that's forbidden. Ravad, however, says he says you're allowed to. Why are you allowed to? Because he holds like Shmuel that it is considered oichel nefesh, that even the poor, if they could afford it, they knew what it is, they would also do it. So therefore it's considered like oichel nefesh. And if it's oichel nefesh, you're allowed to even light a fire. So therefore it's not a problem. And different moiled reich is not a problem. It's only a rabban. Meat did have a bisser gumra. When you put meat directly on the coal, doesn't extinguish fire a little bit and increase the fire yet is permitted. The same thing over here. So and the reason why you're allowed to, because that's a normal way of cooking, that it extinguishes, but that very same fire that comes back. He was dashing in the entrance of the Reish Galus. He said the following words: Ketura shadi. Ketura is permitted. Now, Ketura can either mean a knot to tie something down, or it can mean smoke. Amalei, Amema, Mike Ketura. What do you mean Ketura is permitted? What do you mean by it? He meant Iktura. If he meant basically. If he meant like they should take gloves and just tie it down to a board or something, and it's a very skilled operation, then Maisa Umanu. Then it is Maisa Uman, it's a skilled operation. I'll do it on Vila Ashen should literally smoke, and that you're allowed to smoke it. You're allowed to put things on coal and make it smoke for like Rava said. Also, Luchayt is forbidden to come Chabet's extinguishing because we're having a big machlekes. If you're allowed, you're not allowed to. Yes, it means to smoking allowed to put your in coal. You're asking a question that you're extinguishing the fire and all that. Meat to the havia bisser gumna. How you allowed to put meat directly on coal? When you place the meat in the coal, right? Immediately where it is, the fire goes out for a few minutes and it comes right back. You say you're allowed to because it's a davar shav l'chol nefesh. It's oichol nefesh. So same too here with reyach. It's considered davar shav l'chol nefesh, and you are permitted. Another version is in the member said what's ketura? It's a skill. And if it's just to generate smoke, also it's forbidden. Creating reyach. Or another I said it. The name of a very great person. I said it for him. It means to give smoke. Like I put meat on coal. You're allowed to because it's a oichel nefesh, and you can even start fire and extinguish fire and so on. So surely this is also because you're enjoying it and you're smelling it and you're enjoying it. It's like a dober shavel chol nefesh, like oichel nefesh, and therefore you're allowed to definitely create fragrance, which is only asa d'rabbanan on Yom Tov, because it's like oichel nefesh. Then the Mishnah tells the third thing that they used to do is tie a goat down and take out it separately and hang up the knees of the goat and the intestines and place it also on the spit right alongside the goat. And they did that to replicate the Korban Pesach. Says the Gemara Tanya, we learned what actually happened at Rabbi Yossi. Says, Tudas Ishraimim, there's this person called Tudas from Rome. He used to conduct the people of Rome, Lechel, to eat Gedi Mekulas. He would tell them to eat this roasted goat on the night of Pesach. He told them it's a good Indian to replicate the Korban Pesach. We're in Chutz La'aretz, let's do it. They sent to him, if you wouldn't have been for Toidus, Goizrani Alecha, I would have decreed neither. I would have put you in Cherem. Why? Because you are causing Yidden to eat korbanos outside of the base of Mikdash, outside Yerushalayim, outside of Israel. Says the Gemara, who consecrated these animals and turned them into a korban pesach that you're accusing him of eating kachim outside? It's like, no, the way they're treating it, it's like a korban, and we have to be very careful. That's why we have the custom that whatever we use for the zeroya, we use very little meat on it. Like the minhag l'balash use a neck, but we take most of the meat off, so it shouldn't look like kachim b'chutz. And that's why he says, you're not allowed to even say buying meat for Pesach. You're supposed to say buying meat for Yom Tov. By saying buying meat for Pesach sounds like you're buying meat for Korban Pesach, and maybe it looks like a korban kachim b'chutz. Now the Gemara continues, with three things that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah matter. We're continuing talking about, like in the house of Gamliel. Now we're going to another Nasi. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became a Nasi when Rabbi Gamliel was impeached, and then they worked out an arrangement that one Shabbos was him, and a few Shabbos was Rabbi Gamliel. So three things that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah permitted. Number one, parosai, and it sounded like his bull, went out with a strap sheben kanel. He allowed a bull to go out with a strap between its horns, because even though behemoth is not allowed to carry, has to rest on Shabbos. Talking about Shabbos here, but it was for beauty. He thought it adorned the animals. He permitted it. That's number one. Number two, now we're going back to Yom Tov. He said you're allowed to use these metal combs that has very thin teeth and very fine teeth, and there's very few gaps in between. You're allowed to use that to comb the animal, remove all the fleas and the parasites. And even though as a result of that, you're causing the animal a wound. Number one, two. Number three, you're allowed to crush the peppers in the kinds of as we'll see, a pestle mortar of theirs, in their crushers of their own. Rabbi Yehuda says, we'll talk about he says you cannot use this metal comb that has these teeth close together. You're causing a wound. You could use a metal comb that has big gaps between the teeth, or made out of, it's not actually metal, made out of wood, and the teeth are much thicker, and therefore it doesn't cause any wounds in the animal. And the Chachamim say not only a mekardi, not allowed to use this metal comb with these fine teeth, there's small gaps, but afle mekatzifin. You're not allowed to even use the wooden comb with the bigger teeth that doesn't cause a wound. Why? We'll see in a minute. First of all, it says that Elazar allowed his bull to go around with this strip between the horns. Sound like he only owned one bull. How can that be? We know he's extremely wealthy, fabulously wealthy. The memla that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah choda pora havli only had one bull. But Amar Rav said, the other said, Amar Yehuda Rav, Rabbi Yehuda's name Rav, Tleisar alfe igli, 13,000 calves. Have a meiser, Rabbi Elazar me'adrei. Rabbi Elazar would give that just as meiser, 10%. Kol shasav every year. Every year he had another, the 130,000 calves, and then he would give meiser 10%. So how can you only have one bull? Says the Gemara, what happened was it wasn't his bull. It was actually his neighbors. So why do we put responsibility on Rabbi Elazar Mazayu? Because he didn't protest against that person. Nikras al Shmoi, it's called his, and he had to fast and all that. Taisha already asked, what do you mean he gave Meiser? Rabbi Elazar Mazayu became the Nasi when Rabbi Gamliel was impeached. But Rabbi Gamliel was not a nasi during the Churban Beis Hamikdash. In fact, that's why Rabbi Yechid ben Zakkai we had before, we'll have Rosh Hashanah, we had a Sukkah, that he came up with a number of takanas right after Churban Beis Hamikdash to so that we can continue remembering the Beis Hamikdash. I mean, Gamil then was a nasi. And also was only 18 years old when he became, he was stated, is instated as a nasi. So where does Maisa come in? After Churban Beis Hamikdash, where does Maisa come in? Says the Gemara, and we know that after Churban Beis Hamikdash, there was no longer Maisa Behema. So Tezek gives a few answers. One is it didn't stop immediately after the Churban Beis Hamikdash. It took a while. So maybe in the times of Rabbi Elazar Mazai, they still give Maisa. Or Rabbi Elazar Mazai was a little tiny kid. He was an orphan. And maybe the overseer, the executive of the state, gave on his behalf Maisa. So maybe when he was 2-3 years old, the Beis Hamikdash was still existing, because we're not exactly sure when it happened. Or third thing is Maisa doesn't mean to Levium. Maisa can mean taxes. That was 10% that he gave, similar to Maisa. So we call it Maisa. Says the Gemara, I don't know what I learned. What's it mean, kid and kids? So
can I ask, how would he have coped with his own Maisa if he's meant to go to Yerushalayim and eat? There's no way he can eat, even if it's taken.
True. This Maisa is, we're talking about Maisa to a Levi, and he would give it to a Levi, 13,000 calves. And a Levi, it's his problem, what they did with it. I'm sure it was more than one Levi.
On years 1 and 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2. So you want to know about Maisa. Maisa Sheni is on. This is Maisa Behema. Maisa Behema is different than Maisa. What do you call it? Then sure, whatever it is. Yeah. So he gave the 10%. He gave Maisa Behema every 10th animal, and then and you're right. So take it to Yerushalayim, but he would have either transferred it to money or gave it away, or sure he worked it out. Okay. I'm not sure. Yeah, good point. What is the difference between Kilun and Kirtzuf? What's the difference? What kind of combs are they? So say Kilun is Ktanim, is a metal comb with fine teeth, and that when you rub it against the animal, it actually causes all kinds of wounds. And Kirtzuf is big wooden teeth, and therefore just sort of smooth. It doesn't cause any wounds. So why? What are the 3 opinions there? The Gimel Machlekes, there are 3 opinions there. Rabbi Yehuda holds. Now remember that these wounds are not intentional. It's unintentional and doesn't necessarily. It's not inevitable. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion davar she'emes kavan aser, something unintentional is still forbidden. So kara the ktanim. So this for this comb with these metal teeth, inevitably, sometimes it will cause a chabura, even though it's not your fault. It was intended. You're liable if you don't do that on Yom Tov. Kartz these large wooden teeth, they ain't oisich, but they never really make any chabura, so therefore that's all right. And don't tell me we shouldn't use also the big wooden teeth, because next time we'll use the fine metal teeth. We're not concerned. And the Rabbanan agree with Rabbi Yehuda. Sabi, they hold Namik Rabbi Yehuda that Dover Shem is Kavan Asa. They also agree that intentions also. But the Gazrin and Kartzev Atakota. But they say, you know what, we're not going to allow thin teeth because of the, we're not going to allow the big wooden teeth, because next time you use the thin metal teeth. But Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah saw, Rabbi holds like Rabbi Shimon, who says Dover Shem is Kavan Mutter, unintentional Mutter. Or being caught, the main cards of Shali, and it's all permitted. Amar Rava, Amar Nachman, Amar Shmuel, but I'm not say Amar Nachman Chudi alone. Halacha ki Rab Shimon, the halacha is like Rab Shimon. I want that dover she'ein miskaven is permitted. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Meidel, Azariah admitted. When Rabbi asked, Amli Rava Nachman. So Rava then turned around to Rab Nachman. No, it's according to the second version of Nachman, just said it himself. So Rava turned to Rab Nachman and said, I understand. Following your logic that the reason why you concluded the halacha Shimon because Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah side with him, then you should say the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda because the Chachamim side with him. The lema halmad halacha Rabbi Yehuda should Chachamim side with him. I hold the halacha Rabbi Shimon for other reasons, and I'm just bringing an extra support. Furthermore, Rabbi Elazar agrees to that as well. Next Mishnah. If you have this milk for pepper, tameya, it is tameh. In order for something to become tameh, if it's made out of metal, even if it's flat and it contracts tumah, it becomes tameh. If it's made out of wood, it's not makabel tumah unless it has a clay kibble, unless it has a receptacle it can receive. So he says over here that this milk of pepper, tameya, is tameh. It has 3 different levels. The very bottom one, as we'll see in a minute, the very bottom one is basically where you trap all the powder, the pepper powder. So that is the clay kibble. The middle one is basically full, it's like a sieve. So it's full of holes and everything falls right through. It doesn't really capture anything, everything falls right through. And then the top one is where you place the pepper in the first place and you start crushing it. It's a metal thing, you start crushing it. So it says the Mishnah, the Chaim Shapil in this meal made out of pepper, Tameis, Tamei, Mishum Shloisha, Kalim, because of the 3 different levels of Kalim that it has. Mishum clay kibble. Number 1 is the bottom keli is a clay kibble. Mishum clay matra is the very top one is metal, where you crush, you start crushing the pepper. Or mishum clay kavara, and because of that sieve in between. So Gemara explains. Tana we learn tachtoin mishum clay kibble. The very bottom one is a clay kibble. It had, that it receives all the pepper powder, and so even though it's made out of wood, but it had a receptacle, so therefore it becomes tame. And so is the middle one. Mishum clay kavara, because of a sieve, even though it doesn't really receive anything, and it goes right through it. Nevertheless, it's made out of wood. It's makabel tumah midrabanan because it's like a material, like a cloth. A material would be makabel tumah, so therefore we said this also makabel tumah. And el yoina, and the very top one where you crush the pepper, is tameh because it's metal. Clay matras. Mishnah. Agola shel cotton. Agola shel cotton is an argument Rashi and Taisus. According to Taisus, it's a walker. A little kid has a walker that he leans on and he pushes and walks. According to Rashi, it's more like a ride-on car. That the kid used to sit in this on the seat there, or like they used to have these wagons. The kid would sit there and it had wheels, and it would travel, and the kid sit there. Now, Tameya Midras, if the kid it became a Zov somehow, then this wagon, because he's sitting on there, the wagon itself becomes equally Tameh because it's specifically meant to be a seat. Because the kid sits on it and he moves down and so on and so forth. And the general rule is if we do not tell him, in other words, if this particular item is really meant to be used for something else, you just decide to have fun with it and you're sitting on it. If we tell you, stand up, please, so that we can use it for its real purpose, so then it is not mikabel, then it's not mikabel tumah because it's not the right keli. But here by the kid's thing, that's what it's for. It's a kid's toy. And therefore it's tameh tumas midas by sitting on it, stepping on it. The nitla b'Shabbos, since it's a keli, a vessel, you're allowed to move it around the Shabbos. The einon nigredet el agabe kelim. You shouldn't roll it on the sand because it'll make impressions in the sand, and it's like digging. And therefore, if it digs in the Shabbos, you're not allowed to do that. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Kol hakelim ein nigrodin." That he says that no keli can actually be dragged on the ground because every keli, even though it doesn't, it's not intentional, it doesn't always happen, it's still forbidden because you might dig holes in the sand. The only exception is this wagon. Why? The wheels are very wide, so it didn't dig up holes. What it did was it compressed the sand. And therefore, because it compressed the sand, there's no digging over here. There's no digging over here. Says the Gemara, the kid leans on it when you tell it Shabbos, why can you move in a Shabbos as a law of a keli? As a law of a keli. I think I skipped a line here. When it says by the wagon, the first town of the mission says you cannot drag these this wagon only if you have to put something underneath it between that and the ground so that the wagon can go over it. Otherwise, it's digging holes. Because even though it's unintentional, Dov Hashem is kavan is also. And then Rabbi Yehuda is the one who says that you're right, except this wagon because it's actually compressing it. So this Mishnah seems to be following Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yehuda seems to be arguing with himself, as we'll see in a minute. It says him further. Why can't you go directly on the ground above keli? My time, but why? Because you're digging holes, even though it doesn't always happen that way. But if it could happen occasionally, and that's a dov shemis kavan, and it's us. So you want to man Rabbi Yehuda, dov shemis kavan us. Because Rab Shimon, if it's Rab Shimon Ahmad, he believes dov shemis kavan is permitted. Rab Shimon says, goyded adam mit the person's allowed to drag across the floor, a bed, a kisei, a chair, a safsel, a bench, or bavad provided shalei kavan lasachrit. You have no intention of making holes in the ground. So obviously this mission does not conform with Rab Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda. Says, I don't understand. If the mission is Rabbi Yehuda says that this walker or this little trolley that the kid's sitting on, you're not allowed to dov Hashem miskaven, you're not allowed to drag on the floor. So how can Rabbi Yehuda himself then argue himself? Look at the end of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda, nothing should be dragged on Shabbos on the sand, except for this wagon. It's compressing. Mipnei shekevesh is in only because it's compressing. Avol chitz loy. But if it would have been making holes, it would be forbidden. No, it's also Rabbi Yehuda. What's going on here? How can you have Rabbi Yehuda arguing Rabbi Yehuda? Says the Gemara, today the two Tanoim who agree with Rabbi Yehuda's principle, Davar Shemus Karban is forbidden, and they're arguing about whether the wagon compresses the sand or whether as the wheels turn, they're actually flicking out some of the sand, and therefore they're digging up as well. And the other one says it hardly happens that way. Usually all it does is it presses down the sand, and therefore there's no digging taking place. Hadin alach yamtiv. That finishes the second perek of Masechta Beya. We'll do the Mishnah now of the third perek. The Mishnah says, Ein sadin dogim. Throwing on yamtiv, that you're allowed to shecht on yamtiv, you're allowed to bake on yamtiv, and you're allowed to cook on yamtiv. You're allowed to do all these avos malachas, but not all avos malachas. Step back a little bit. Things that you could have done prior to yamtiv, you have no reason to do it on yamtiv. So therefore, you want to capture fish or go fishing. Ain't sudden dogging. You're not allowed to catch fish, trap fish. Min habeberim. A beber today is a zoo, like an aquarium, a zoo, any enclosed area. So you're not allowed to catch fish from these, let's say, fish ponds. And you're not allowed to catch fish beyond on Yom Tov. Why? Because you could have done this before Yom Tov, and put it in a little pot or pan or something with water and take it out whenever you need it. You didn't have to leave it there. So therefore, this is a malacha. Seder is one of the 39 malachas, and there's no excuse why you have to do it. Nor do you have to feed fish. Even the fish are yours, because fish can survive without feeding them on a daily basis, either from grass or larger fish eat smaller fish. They manage. But you are permitted to capture a chayiv min habebarin. According to this view, you're allowed to capture. If you already have them in an enclosed area, you're allowed to go ahead and catch them further, because it's not really called trapping, because they've already been trapped inside in a barn, in a pen. But fish can swim away and go hide in crevices and corners, so therefore they're still considered like you're trapping. The noisten leaf name is when it comes to animals, you have to feed them. In the winter, they need food, or because there's no grass around, and even in the summertime, if there's a lot of people where they are, the people trample on the grass. There's not much feed for them. Rashbag says the rule is as follows: Loi kol habeborin shavin. Not all of these aquariums or these enclosed areas are the same. This is the rule. Let's just give you a rule. Kol hamechusat seder. Let's say it's a big enough area that even though, let's say, you have animals caught the cows, you still have to chase after it because they can run away. Then it's mechusat seder. It still needs to be captured further. And also, you're capturing on Shabbos. On Yom Tov, you're not allowed to. But it's a very small enclosed area. You just go in there and you're right there. You can't really escape. Then it is permitted. Okay, we'll do the Gemara Mishnah tomorrow on this, and tomorrow I guess we'll start at the same time, 7:30.